All right, hey there, Vermont, America. It's time to have a little chat. This is a awesome cartoon rendition of AOC, famously known as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Her recent statement that the state of America is garbage, which I think just about every single American that has ever served in any U.S. military branch that has served overseas in socialist, communist, Democrat, socialist, progressives, progressive socialist should really tune in on this because, hi there, Christopher Thyler, how are you? I can't believe I actually woke up this morning, popped on the news, having a cup of coffee, and seeing the kind of report that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the freshman New York U.S. Congresswoman from Brooklyn, New York, who's led a very easy life, obviously, because that statement is not only offensive to anybody that's ever worked hard, who's actually qualified doing things. Sitting in academia, listening to these professors who basically sit on their butts and get paid really well to teach you some serious garbage. It's time for a little reality check because we're going into 2019, 2020. She wrote up a seriously lazy 12-page Green New Deal, the 100% renewable energy makeover for America, without really doing very much research. On top of the fact she jumped on the bandwagon with Feel the Burn from the Burn, Bernie Sanders, and many Vermonters know the Burn very, very well. An extremely lazy individual who loves to make big, huge, utopian dream, Democrat, socialist. Here's the foggy dream. Now let's bring it down to reality, because Bernie Sanders has not been a very successful U.S. Senator, period. All right? And people are going to probably say I sound angry, which I'm really not. I actually learned a lot in this 2018 midterm election cycle, and I'm going to flip the script because I want to kind of discuss what is really becoming an issue. And matter of fact, let's just hear it from the governor. I'm going to flip this over.
Governor Phil Scott has looked at the results
Good old
of town
Stuart
meeting day
Ledbetter
elections this week and said one thing stands out. Less than 20% of voters participated. While city and school budgets passed almost without exception, very few voters were making all the decisions.
The lack of participation. I think that was what I took from town meeting, which is really disappointing.
Is it time to consider giving people the day off?
You know, we do that on a statewide basis.
Lack of participation. Town meeting. The number of individuals, when you're talking about, and I'm just going to use the comparison between Berry City, Berry Town voters, when there's less than 2% of the 5,000 and some odd registered voters in each Berry Town, Berry City, and you have a small, not even a, well, yeah, it's a way small minority that actually, one, is aware that there's a vote on that day and how it's going to impact their state, well, their local Berry City government, local Berry Town. The participation levels are seriously low. And we have heard this from across the state of Vermont that there's a lot, I mean, let's face it, the newspapers and several of these websites They're either not making the announcement in advance enough so that voters can be aware that there's a vote on a specific day, a paper that they can read going in that's not written to lean people one way or another, but allowing them to make their own decisions. Hey there, Fred McCullough. How are you, sir? And this is seriously sad because, I mean, Governor Phil Scott is correct. Just in the totals that we've seen in several votes over the budgets between Berry City, Berrytown, and the forced merger, there is a very small percentage of individuals that are actually participating, going to the voting booth and casting a ballot. It seems there's a lot of perception that, and I think either one, people are no longer reading, they're no longer going on to their city or town websites to see the vote, to break down what it's about, for what budget, what's being allocated for what. That seems to be consistent across several counties across the state of Vermont. You've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pushing the state of America is garbage. I just say we just start pulling some funding. I mean, I am getting so sick and tired of the climate change apocalypse that they're fear-mongering in our kids right now. And like we don't care about the environment and we don't care about the future. When the fact is, you're being purposely cut out of the conversation because there's a lopsided Democrat, Socialist, Democrat, moderate, progressive, socialist progressives. There's just a lot of socialism going on down in Montpelier, Vermont. And Vermont is running a $4.6 billion deficit because they jumped on the plan, the Obamacare plan, back in the really seriously stagnant decade of... Listen, we've been fighting way too many wars on too many fronts, and to be honest with you, as a veteran that served, to come back to the state of Vermont that is so drug infested, everybody's dealing with alcoholism, and you do not have a path out of that. I mean, it's just... Plus, that plan, that Green New Deal, was such a lazy attempt from a freshman U.S. Congresswoman from New York, pushing the Green New Deal, a $93 trillion makeover of 100% renewable energy, when it has already been proven you have to have some kind of nuclear reactor, some kind of nuclear stability within that electronic grid for it to even be successful going into the 21st century. And listen, I qualified on 2 fast attack nuclear submarines. I am not a nuclear physicist. I had to qualify back aft on the reactors, on individuals that went to school in order to run those reactors. However, I did blow away my test in order to qualify for any U.S. Naval Submarine Service School, some of the best in the military. And there's this little wimpy stuff going on. It's like, oh my God, you've got to just be careful of what you say all the time. Otherwise, I don't know, I might offend somebody. So I'm just going to vent. As a veteran, I'm pretty offended by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's statement that the state of America is garbage. Right now, the state of Vermont does appear like it's garbage because it's been listening to this far-left agenda of tax, 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 tax. Oh, and let's face it, we've messed up so horribly in some really not so hard decisions in the past decade that we need to seriously wake up and get back to being more business friendly, for one, addressing the tax code. The state of Vermont tax code is rigged for failure. It is consistent. You just have to go across all 14 counties. You can actually sit in meetings with business owners. Now, there's been long, family passed down businesses, but now many of them are are failing because, let's face it, either their family's dying off, they don't have anybody who's interested in actually running the business model, and that is seriously sad. I mean, my father put 50 plus years in the granite industry. Loves granite. Probably knows stone better than any academic geologist that has ever graduated from the University of Vermont or any school in the state of Vermont, because he's worked it his whole life. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, the new 50 Shades of Gray, communist, Democrat, socialist, progressive, socialist, basically a whole lot of socialist, utopian, I can't calculate numbers dream. And it's time to wake up, because, I mean, Vermont is a beautiful state, for one. And yes, I come across maybe a little too aggressive at times. You can blame that on the U.S. Naval Submarine Service, the U.S. Navy diving community. When you get to work with some of the elite groups in the U.S. military, you love this country so much that you're willing to put everything on the line to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect it. You should actually start waking up a little bit, because this is really seriously getting old. I mean, I love my children, and I have every concern about Vermont and the environment, but I cannot buy into a $500 million taxpayer-funded $15.5 billion soon-to-be taxpayer Ponzi scheme boondoggle, because the fact is they're completely ignoring innovation in several of those green energy industries, as well as the pure fact that every state that has tried to, or tested this 100% renewable only approach has had to plug into the new leading edge small modular reactors. There are so many advances in the 21st century nuclear energy fields that Vermont has been just indoctrinated after 30 years of listening to one of the most out-of-touch, outdated, independent socialist transplants from New York up to Vermont. And the trifecta of deflecta between Leahy, Sanders, and Welch, causing one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in Vermont history with the EB5 scandal, a negative $375 million result, a biotech that was just a complete lie, as well as not listening to individuals that have actually traveled the planet, have come back, protecting you from some of the most worst dictatorships and complete, utter, it's all about me scumbags on the planet. And we got Bernie Sanders pitching his 2019-2020 bid, and yeah, he's up at 25%. But thank God for Pete from Fox News for going up to St. Albans at the Maple City Diner and actually asking around to some local Vermonters, rather than just listening to Vermont media that cuts out anybody that has the brass cojones to actually stand up, point out the many failures in the state of Vermont legislature, the Vermont House, the Vermont Senate, especially the lieutenant governor's seat right now. He's just, I mean, what is he getting paid for? I mean, come on. Vermont is so much better than this. We had a long tradition of hard work, entrepreneur spirit, farming. We used to be the breadbasket of the East Coast, and now we're like the slum basket, the number 50 GDP state in the country that's pushing the new climate change apocalypse in order to create enough fear-mongering so they can get donations to destroy 200 miles of Green Mountain Ridgeline, 30,000 acres of solar farms, when the heavy metal alone in the solar panels are toxic. They have no recycling plan whatsoever. They just want to pollute these fields with all these solar panels. I mean, listen, if you're the Green Mountain State, if you're the 100% renewable whatever, then start cleaning up the state of Vermont. You've got so many decaying cars out in across fields, start recycling it, start getting Vermont back into an economic picture of creating jobs rather than a never-ending excuse mill, an extreme lazy Bernie Sanders pushing the Medicare for all plan, because that's a paid-in plan for one. And listen, I must admit, I haven't had some of the best insurance agents sometimes, and I might get a little upset, but that's why you get rid of them. You fire them. You don't invest with these people that do not take your best interest when they're playing like they do. They're emotional, they're acting, telling you that they're investing for your future. It's not that hard. Okay? First off, got to break some mindsets out there, because first off, this free thing that Bernie Sanders is indoctrinating our kids in and getting them all excited about. Yes, there are some major issues that, especially on the undergraduate and the master's and PhD levels, there are some individuals up there in that academia world of theory, projections, estimations. Now, granted, these are all part of the, I mean, you do need to have this kind of an education to manage a multi-million-dollar project and actually create a deliverable that generates revenue back for the investors. And when I say that out of pure, direct honesty, because, man, I had some teachers that weren't the best. I had some really good teachers that were awesome. There were plenty of individuals that will sabotage a dream. That's the one thing I do realize here in the state of Vermont. There are some seriously lazy people that just expect everything to come their way. And maybe it's because they're, whatever reason, they've had it pumped in their head and they have such a low self-esteem. They haven't been around an elite team of individuals that can get you so fired up. And when that elite team can sneak in, sneak out without even being detected, gather the intelligence while protecting you here back at home, and to come back home and to listen to this seriously lazy approach, ignoring other options, ignoring people that have some really good common sense plans that could power Vermont into the 21st century while bringing back profitability in the state of Vermont. Oh, my God, it gets frustrating. I must admit, I can see why people are giving up on Vermont and just wanting to get out, because, Bernie Sanders is lazy, in my view. He is not a hard worker, period. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a beautiful young lady, a very privileged, beautiful young lady, to be able to walk through academia, get a degree, decide to run for a public office and become New York, which is, Brooklyn is that's like Democrat Central, okay? So it wasn't like it was it was an upset of an outdated Democrat that probably should have retired many years ago, but I don't know how to say it without, sometimes I just I get so frustrated listening to the same broken record over and over. When you've served in these other countries, you've actually seen the nasty side of communism, socialism, the lack of innovation. Just the lack of mutual respect for other human beings, let alone you get elected as a New York U.S. Congresswoman. She now has a six-figure income. She gets access to some of the best health care. She's obviously gone on the New York fashion circuit in order to make sure that she's fashion ready, photo ready. And yet, completely clueless. That woman needs to go and actually, she needs to hang out. We got to send her down to Venezuela. Have her passing out water and food in Venezuela. And have her stand right in front of the Nicolas Maduro little circle of military individuals that will not allow her to pass out the food, the humanitarian effort, because they're trying to figure out a way to make it profitable for them again. Okay? It's an old playbook by dictators. Wait until America sends off all the millions of dollars of humanitarian effort, then they come in, swoop in, get rid of the people that they're supposed to be leading, that they care about, okay? And then find a way to make money off of that humanitarian effort. That is like the oldest dictator playbook move on the planet, and it's one of the main reasons why they fail every single time, is the fact that eventually it's exposed, just like this Democrat Socialist platform of the Green New Deal, Medicare for all. We're going to find a way to take a good program that was paid in by hard-working Americans, and we're going to nationalize it. So that way we can make sure everybody gets mediocre to less than mediocre health care. Because the moment you start cutting out research and innovation into some of these medicines, these new technologies, that's exactly what you're going to get. Canada was voted the #1 worst healthcare country in the free world. Okay, that was just a recent report. The Obama era was not a very productive era. Now, granted, the first president that probably decided to go and invest in environmental technologies, let's say. That's fine. I'm not saying getting rid of renewable energy. I'm just saying use your brain. There's some common sense. You got to plug in the nuke. They've got small modular reactors now. Stable. That can provide energy into the grid. You've got Quebec north of us with all the Hydro-Quebec. Vermont, the only way, when Vermont started going deep into this $4.6 billion debt was when they shut down Vermont Yankee. Now, that plant has been there for a long time. That is more like a 60s, 70s era of design. You know, the big everything. There are the 21st century designs, the efficiency alone, the amount of fuel that it takes. You know what? There's going to be future presentations. And I promise to bring some of the best leading edge, not only speakers that are experts within their field, because I'm listening to a bunch of individuals down in Montpelier going to these presentations, and it's completely lopsided. The projections, the estimations are just that, estimations. The cost, though, the motive is clear. The fossil fuel tax is to put such a burden on the poor and the middle class in Vermont, and it's gonna squash, if not completely destroy, a good percentage of the 96% of small business owners that are trying to squeak out a living in the state of Vermont. Because let's face it, when you've reached the C Corp level, you're a multi-billion dollar corporation. Then you start selling off assets like Ben and Jerry's. Once they became multi-millionaires, they sold out to Unilever in order to get back their investment. Now they're going around, there's 7 CEOs that have actually decided to take on this renewable energy field, okay? And now they're dictating a 100% renewable energy only approach when they already know that it's failed across several other states without having the nuclear power layer of energy. Vermont was in a profitability picture for a state when it had Vermont Yankee able to plug in a stable energy source into Vermont's grid. Ever since we've gone to this pie in the sky, Democrat socialist utopia, Vermont $4.6 billion in debt. $1.6 billion just in the teachers union. And I can see why teachers are freaking out. Because guess what? You have been pumping so much of this climate change apocalypse into our youth and generation. You have completely lost touch with some of the industries out there that are putting out awesome innovations on proven technologies that are stable. Do not destroy the environment that you claim that you're protecting with 200 miles of industrial wind turbines. Now listen, we can definitely have a certain number of industrial wind turbine projects, and we can certainly have a certain number of solar farms. But I want that industry to be responsible. I want you to be honest about the heavy metals within those solar panels. I want Vermonters to start asking the questions about how toxic are these heavy metals? How are we going to recycle these solar panels? This is some stuff that has not been addressed. It won't be covered by the media because, oh my goodness, we've got someone who's actually intelligent, can think for themselves, and has actually experienced it out in the real world, rather than this dream academia model that keeps getting pitched out there without any common sense. Thank you for listening. Now, that being said, we're going to start throwing out some facts, because good old Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I must admit, she's pretty and everything, but she's got me a little fired up. Oh, and I also want to talk about this stuff. Women on birth strike. That is very sad, because it's a bunch of individuals that have just stopped thinking for themselves, okay? They're buying into the 12-year climate change apocalypse. And listen, their body, their choice, that's fine. Just don't expect men to be sticking around either. Because I'm going to tell you something. I am sick and tired of listening to it's my way or the highway. There's some old, outdated stereotypes that are just that. Old. Completely outdated. And we need to just leave them back where they deserve to be. Because there's a whole new generation of very solid professionals, proven. They've managed multi-million-dollar projects. They've actually shared this knowledge. They're not on a political agenda, for one. And we have some future shows coming up on some of the local public access, because that's about all we can afford right now, because basically we are the knowledgeable outcasts that, you know, these young academia elites, these arrogant, not well put together plans, they don't want to face any scrutiny. They just want to, you know, get that little pat on their back. Oh, hey, that sounds really beautiful. Everything sounds great. Sounds like you're solving all of our problems. However, push comes to shove, and you really start to crunch the numbers. Just between the two, the two 50 Shades of Communism couple, the new power couple between Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the $125.6 trillion couple without a plan. Not very well thought out, extremely lazy, and that's something that we need to start changing in academia, as well as from our elementary schools, and definitely in our high schools, because we have some lazy individuals just popping on the internet, piecing together this whatever, presenting it to their teacher, getting an A. No management experience, period. Has never, ever really designed the technology, let alone worked their first real job. Yeah, not buying it. Done listening. That climate change apocalypse is just that. It's fear-mongering. They're begging for donations so they can figure out a way to destroy. I mean, Vermont, in my view, still can be turned around. But when you've been indoctrinated by a seriously old, outdated Bernie Sanders that has proven to contradict himself many, many times, because, one, he doesn't do his homework very well. They certainly are failed real estate speculators, and I would not... I don't know. Don't you get sick and tired of listening to him? I'm already tired of listening to it. I've seen the collapse of socialism. I've seen the collapse of several communist states. Dictatorships is what it, evolves into. And it's about this little elite class. We get everything, and the middle and the poor get nothing. And that's not America. It's not the Vermont that I grew up in. The state of Vermont right now is in complete shambles due to lack of leadership, due to lack of just standing up, for one. I mean, first off, men, where are your... You know what I want to say? Either get your testosterone back or grow them back or something. And then there's some outstanding, intelligent women out there that have been bullied and beaten down by this extreme toxic femininity. Where is your voice? I mean, ladies, come on now. As much as these women try to flip the script telling the world that your men think for you, oh, come on. Nay, nay, moose breath. We know better than that. If you're a true gentleman and have respect for the one that you love, your dream, the woman that you have built a dream with, you always listen to her input. And I don't know, this toxic femininity stuff is I'm not going to say it. It's just not very well thought out. It's really mean. It's very angry. And I kind of feel sorry for them. Because as much as they want equal pay, they want to do everything, then you got to qualify the same schools that we had to go through. You got to do the same amount of push-ups. You got to run with sand up your butt across beaches. You got to go out and save people and be able to lift a 200 to 300 pound guy out of the water, drag him back to safety, resuscitate him, bring him back to life. Listen, I'm just tired of listening to the socialist dream, the utopian BS, Bernie Sanders. That was, by the way, I'm giving credit to someone put that out there. That was outstanding. BS. Bernie Sanders. That's all it is. A smoke and mirror show of BS. Okay, I got to go back to writing up this paper. We got some presentations coming up, and I got an announcement. Vermont Technical College. They have public hearings. Judd Hall. 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. discussing some of the fish and wildlife changes, the hunting changes, several of the gun bills. S1 being sponsored by John Rogers, which I actually hope to have a discussion with on a more in-depth approach on how Vermont can address the drug addiction, how we can address the alcoholism. And, if an individual that is under this influence decides to go off, grab a relative's rifle, kill all her family, and then go after the DCF worker, and then is appealing. Listen, she committed a multiple murder. It was well thought out, apparently. And we do have some serious issues here in the state of Vermont that need to be addressed. One, stop cutting out good fathers out of their children's lives. There are some, great dads out there. There's some awesome moms out there. There's some awesome potential moms that wanted to be moms, but they keep marrying the wrong men. Listen, if you want to be an alcoholic and you want to be a codependent, you want to drink yourself and your liver into death, that's fine. You married each other, go for it. If you want to be a codependent drug addict, I mean, listen, there's some awesome, I feel it's a complete waste of resources, waste of human potential. There's some outstanding individuals that, they didn't make the right choices, but they're not human trash in my view. Or let's just say in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's the state of America garbage. I mean, what is she basically saying? There should be a lot of people asking about what is that statement about. Capitalism has raised more people out of poverty, more middle class into wealth. It's about innovation, entrepreneurial spirit, hard work ethic, and that is what's built America, and it's what used to build Vermont. Now we just got a bunch of lazy butts, pushing the climate change apocalypse, fear-mongering, and our kids asking for donations. How many donations or how many organizations that are going around begging for money for one thing or another? we probably need a little bit of a downsizing in the nonprofit industry because I'm sick and tired of the phone calls. I can't even get through the important calls because I'm constantly being bombarded by some con artist, because there's plenty of that out there too. You can't even find out who's real anymore, and you're trying to Thanks for listening. We have like I was going to just tell you, I'm going to read off some events here. Vermont Technical College down at Judd Hall, there's going to be a public hearing. Fish and wildlife, hunting changes, fishing changes, the outdoor camping, outdoor shooting ranges, firearm waiting periods, mandatory 48-hour lockup stuff. March 12th, 2019, 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., VTC Judd Hall. Chris Bradley should be down there for the Vermont Federation. They're going to be handing out some stuff. Hopefully going to be appearing on a future show so we can discuss this and get right down to the truth rather than this, word of mouth gossip that really gets a lot wrong, and people get so confused that they're afraid to go in and actually read it themselves. But that's a key public hearing. Vermont Technical College, Judd Hall, public hearing, March 12th, 2019, 5:30, 7:30. Here, I'll just flip it over. You can also read it yourself here. All right. And we also have the March 23rd. No Carbon Tax Vermont group presenting at the State House from 9 a.m. to noon. That's a Saturday, March 23rd. We actually have some more speakers coming out of the woodwork. Just imagine that. Hi there, Lori. Dockster, how are you? We have some individuals that are starting to come out of the woodwork because they're starting to actually read or hear more about the multi-million-dollar plan to destroy the Green Mountain Ridgelines of Vermont, the $500 million anti-fossil fuel. We gotta hate fossil fuel because guess what? We just do. And that's all out of fun as well. I got to rib Phil Scott a little bit because he did. We're going to go back to the
from our state employees. I don't know what the answer is, but we collectively have to think about this and try and do something different because it's clearly not working.
Burlington reported 20% turnout on Tuesday. Small towns with traditional meetings during the day saw far lower participation rates. The final numbers won't be in for another month.
The final numbers won't be in for another month. Why? Does it take that long? Town hall is very important. People should get involved. And I realize that there are people that'll purposely cut you out of a 2-minute time slot so that way your voice is not heard. If that's an issue, then please contact the Green Mountain Republicans on our Facebook. I will be overhauling the websites. It is a nonprofit. It's a Vermont History of Politics page. It maybe, I don't know, it could develop into a party because there seems to be moderate Democrats, a large pool of independents, and some Republicans that feel that they're not being listened to, period. And many of them want to run for a public office. They don't get the support from either of the aisle because they're not aligned with the far left's utopian dream that's going to just bring Vermont more failure. I don't know. Listen, I am definitely listening. This is not, the Green Mountain Republicans is a history of Vermont politics in the 21st century. Is town hall meeting failing? Obviously, there's not enough people getting the notifications, or they're not able to get off work so they can actually make a decision. Or is it purposely not being communicated in far enough advance so that Vermont voters, taxpayers, can cast an educated vote without someone trying to manipulate, like we've seen between the Berry City, Berrytown merger issue, trying to represent or falsely represent something. You should have access to the truth and know exactly what's going to impact your location on a local level. Then we should address the state level. We've got enough of a problem right now on the state level. The Vermont House and the Vermont, it's a lopsided supermajority that has destroyed Vermont. I don't care what anybody says. The state is going down. It's in a $4.6 billion debt. The bond ratings alone should have been enough of a scare. You've got to get involved if you want your voice heard. And we do have several options now where you can plug into town meetings. You can get them on the local public access. And if you want to appear on a future broadcast, let me know. We've got some really good professionals that are like in the muck, in the pits, fighting it out, trying to, understand this legislation, what it is about, what's motivating it, why is the state of Vermont being, dictated to and regulated by out-of-state issues. It's all about the bling bling. They're obviously getting paid or bought off rather easily, and we're going to dive into some of that too in some future broadcasts. We're going to show you how you can track the money. Bernie Sanders has been accepting PAC money for quite some time. It is out there, and if you want to sign up for some classes, I can make it affordable. But I definitely need to raise some funding myself so I can keep this stuff going because, the free stuff, just grabbing pens and not paying me for them, or, you got to have funding. I'm trying to do it in a more of a private sector way without going around begging for money and donations. But, I don't know. It just depends whether you want to hear the truth and be able to make an informed decision, or if you love just listening to the smoke and mirror dream types that end up delivering more despair, loss of jobs, a huge debt, and poverty. Because that is all that Leahy, Sanders, and Welch has delivered in the 44-plus years that Leahy's been down there. Yes, he's probably written some good legislation, but the state of Vermont, that trifecta of deflecta is a horrible team. Vermont is failing, deep in debt, and we've got a mixed up mess down in the Vermont House and the Vermont Senate. We need some youth with energy, some brain power, some proven experience, because, I don't know, this is not the Vermont that I risked my life to come back for and just listen to never-ending drunk people just talk about stories, and then people going off and getting high off of drugs and killing themselves. So that's just sad. It's complete boredom. And Vermont had a chance to really lead not too long ago, and those legislators just took the lazy way out. We got a lot of lazy in Vermont. It's just it's sad, and all you've got to do is drive around the 14 communities to see it. There's some industry that can be brought back into the state. You got to address the state tax code, and being the number 50 GDP, with the kind of talent we have in the state of Vermont, with the kind of products, we used to be a really good high quality product producer, and now it's turning into, we got to rebrand our farming as organic. Whatever farms we have left. All right. Try to stay off the roads. Hopefully, it was snowing pretty harsh. Got to get out there and probably remove some of it, but we'll see. Try to have a great weekend. Hopefully, you'll plug into that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying that the state of America is garbage. There's 4 freshman congresswomen that are just upsetting a lot of people. And maybe it is time to bring down Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, because they're horrible leaders. They cannot seem to control these seriously offensive individuals. So, have a great weekend.